Hello, everyone, and welcome to Queering Italian-Canadian Poetry, an event to celebrate National Poetry Month with poets Tina Biello, Liana Cusmano, Melissa Giacomini, Steff Mendolia, and Christopher Sisca. This event is organized by Accenti magazine in collaboration with the Association of Italian-Canadian Writers, also known as the AICW, with the support of the Canada Council for the Arts via the League of Canadian Poets. My name is Licia Canton, founding editor-in-chief of Accenti, past president of the AICW. It's my pleasure to co-host this event with AICW's president, Christine Sansalone, and vice president, Maria Pia Spadafora, our technical host today. I'd like to invite Christine Sansalone to the microphone.
Thank you very much, Licia. Thank you everyone for coming. Grazie a tutti di essere qui oggi con noi. I recognize that we are all on different territories at this time, but I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that I am located on unceded Indigenous lands of the Anishinaabe, and Wanapitei First Nations. The Association of Italian-Canadian Writers acknowledges them and other nations who care for the land across our country, and we pay our respects to Canada's first storytellers.
Thank you very much, Christine. This is our very first event featuring writers in Here and Now, Volume 2, an anthology of queer Italian-Canadian writing. The volume has just been released. It includes poetry, fiction, and nonfiction with 50 contributors from across Canada. Why a second volume by queer Italian-Canadian writers? Well, while the first volume broke down barriers, it also provoked pockets of resistance in some Italian-Canadian circles, thereby demonstrating that the conversation about acceptance and inclusion must continue. I'd like to mention that this volume is made possible with the support of numerous organizations and individuals, including the Elia Chair in Italian-Canadian Studies at York University, the Queer Studies in Quebec Research Group, English Language Arts Network, the Department of Humanistic Studies at the University of Calabria, the University of Birmingham, Emilio Goggio Chair in Italian Studies at the University of Toronto, the Association of Italian-Canadian Writers, Villa Charities, Accenti magazine. There are a number of in-person and online events coming up, and for the latest information, please visit queeritaliancanadian.com. And now the microphone is yours, Christine.
Thank you. I would like to now introduce our speakers for today, starting with Tina Biello. Tina was born to immigrant parents in a small logging town on Vancouver Island. The Weight of Survival is her fourth book of poems. She recently finished a 3-year cycle of writing librettos for composers with the Vancouver Island Symphony. Our next speaker is Liana Cusmano. Liana is a Montreal Slam champion, finalist for the QWF Spoken Word Prize, and author of Catch and Release. They wrote and directed Matters of Great Unimportance and La Femme Finale, screened at the Cannes Film Festival. Their work in English, French, and Italian explores heritage, queerness, and mental illness. Our next speaker, after Liana, is Melissa Giacomini, who is a creative writer based in Montreal, the child of Southern Italian immigrants that settled in what's known as Canada. She is proudly queer and bisexual. Melissa is forever curious, particularly about the impacts of consumerist culture on human connection. Melissa cares deeply about community, authenticity, and joy. Our fourth speaker for today is going to be Steff Mendolia, who is a third-generation Southern Italian Canadian. They are a sober, queer, non-binary trans witch, a mad disability justice worker, writer, and sound artist. They completed an arts-based MA in Critical Disability Studies at York University, Trans-Feminist Witchcraft, a psychiatric survivor narrative. They are working on a PhD in Gender, Feminist, and Women's Studies. And our fifth speaker for today is going to be Christopher Sisca, an Italian-Canadian visual artist, writer, and anthropologist. He is studying anthropology working on a PhD at the University of Oxford and working on Canadian gastrotourism development. He holds an MSc in social anthropology from the University of Oxford and an honors BFA in visual arts from York University. His creative practices intersect his Calabrian culture and queerness. Now I would like to ask Licia to come back to screen.
Yes. Hi. So, Tina, we'd love to hear your poetry. The mic is yours.
Okay, grazie. Ciao tutti. It's wonderful to be connected to our community across Canada, our Italo-Canadian community and our queer community. So often here on Vancouver Island, I feel like we're tucked way out west. So it's really wonderful. I will start by reading a few poems from the book. I'm really excited to be part of this. Thank you, Licia, for your mass organization skills. It's wonderful. And a couple of the poems I'll start with sort of the place where I grew up. I live on the unceded territory of the Snanawas Coast Salish people, and my family immigrated from southern Italy to a tiny little logging town called Lake Cowichan, where there were not many Italians. So the first one is called Number 8, Cottonwood Street. The first time I ate pig's brain, fried in my mum's cast iron pan, I thought it would make me smarter. Nothing odd or gross, just food from the old country in our little house in Lake Cowichan. One afternoon, Layla came over for lunch, grabbed the pig's blood in a jar out of the fridge, thought it was strawberry jam. From then on, I insisted only Twinkies and peanut butter on white bread came to school. Okay, so like many immigrants, my dad worked in the logging industry out here. And this is a tribute to my late papa. It's called The Photograph on His Dresser. He is standing on a logging truck, tiny on these trees, cedar, hemlock, fir. All around him an echo, the mountains stripped. My mom was a tree planter. Pictures of her 8 months pregnant, me inside on the slopes of Bald Mountain. I learned to talk tree, hear the forest breathe, the green. Dad never felled trees. He just cut their limbs off. Fallen soldiers like the ones he hid under in Libya. The Red Cross faded on his arm. He didn't want his picture taken. English so broken he thought they sent him up to tighten the chains. They wanted a picture of the short Italian, the smallest man on the sort standing on the biggest tree of the year. The picture stayed hidden in his drawer, the old 1x2 from the 60s, now blown up and framed for his 80th birthday. He didn't say a word, thanked my sister for the birthday gift, too old now to take back all the killing in his life. And another piece that's in this wonderful anthology is called Lucia. And I see we have a Lucia on, I did see that we have a Lucia on this call. So here we go. Lucia is my middle name. I'm the only female born in the family with such an Italian name. My other 3 sisters have middle names, which are all the same and come from the deep roots of Catholicism, Maria. I must have been the miracle birth, born last and really not to be born at all. Born close to the saint day of Santa Lucia, December 13th. When I would ask Mom why I was named Lucia and not Maria, she would tell me the tale above and then tell me why she is a saint in the first place. I learned she became a saint because she wouldn't be taken by any suitor who came knocking on her door. Rather, she would give them her eyes, pluck them out and shock him so he wouldn't come back. It worked. Every time she plucked them out, they came back more beautiful. Curious, more suitors would arrive, enthralled by the mystery and the story. How is it I believe the story? Why am I Lucia? I would ask Mom. That story was her reply. Santa Lucia, the saint of light. I didn't escape the deep roots of Catholicism either. I know the rain of the West Coast well. It is in my blood, even though my family are not from here. Where is here? This tiny village of Lake Cauchin nestled in the mountains, where there are more days of rain than sunshine. I always knew something was missing, even though I had never been back to the old country until I was 21. All throughout my years of jumping puddles to school in the rain, the constant rain, it was familiar, yet somehow not home. What was missing? The language we spoke at home was a rhythm foreign at school. English was foreign, yet I spoke it perfectly without an accent. Nobody mistook me for an immigrant, yet this wasn't home. Outside, the rain comes down sideways, the trees giants. A fast-flowing river can be heard. Owls nest, trout jump. Inside this house, it is 30 degrees and the geraniums bloom. Dust from the farm gets tracked in on boots. Horses neigh in the stable down below. This house smells like summer and heat. Tomatoes simmer to become sugo for tonight's meal. Here, the percussive rhythm of a language beats under the house, keeps us dancing in the damp, wet coast. I used to hide my lunches from the other kids. I didn't want them to laugh at the weird sandwich with mortadella and provolone in my brown paper bag lunch. I longed for a wagon wheel, yet never offered to trade my cookie, osht in our dialect, otherwise known as pizzelle, waffle-shaped, boring vanilla cookie. When I tried, the kids would laugh. So I ate my lunch at my desk, not socializing and trying to make myself invisible. In fact, long after the kids went out to play, I would sit and finish any part of my lunch that looked even weirder, while Mr. Hooper, the custodian, came round and wiped down all the desks. He knew our family. He went to the same Catholic church, the old wooden building up on the hill. He knew the story of my life as much as any Anglo could know the experience of being other, being an immigrant. This was a town of 2,000 people. Everyone knew everybody's business. Okay. So the last one I'll read is called The Youngest of Seven. And that's what I am. So yeah. She was born the archer, shooting arrows from her perch in the apple tree. Cans lined up, each arrow aiming for the O in Esso. Stayed outside at dusk, swam in the river until her lips turned blue. At 7, she didn't know the body ache from climbing would follow her, that the boy inside didn't have a name. Stories of war gave her a distrust of boats, lemons, and mountains. Her dad caught, sent as a prisoner to northern India. Youngest of 7, a mother whose heart burst open to everyone, a family stuck in post-World War II southern Italy, church every Sunday, pasta 3 times a week. They prayed the rosary each night before bed. The women she brought home every Christmas got them talking. One year, the woman who came home was her wife. It didn't go away, was not a phase, came early and never left. Her lips found the softness she couldn't turn back. Grazie.
Grazie, Tina. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Liana Cusmano.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much to all of you for being here. I think so much has happened in the last few years as regards queer and Italian Canadiana. I think just the sheer number of people who are here really speaks to that, and the range, really just how far away some of us are coming from Italy and the UK and from coast to coast to coast. So I'm really honored and really happy to be here and to be sharing the stage with these poets. Tina, that was very beautiful, and all of the poets' work. I've seen little bits here and there, are really beautiful. The first poem that I'm going to read, I think it's important to mention that it has seen like lots of different versions over the years. and that the poem exists in a very specific moment in time that has come and gone. The time when my grandmother was like, you know, being a queer person is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And I remember when she told me that, and I said, you know, I love all the people, and this is something about me that I think you should know. And I'm with a woman at the moment. And she said, this is just the worst thing that has ever happened to me, which I think is fine. Like, I consider to this day that conversation to be an unqualified success, because it means that being born into poverty in southern Italy, growing up during the Second World War, and living under a brutal fascist dictatorship wasn't all that bad. If my queerness is the worst thing that has ever happened to my grandmother, it means that maybe Mussolini wasn't as terrible as we've all been led to believe. I don't know. That's the way that I like to think of it, and how I thought of it for the longest time. And that isn't really true anymore. My grandmother gets mad if my partner doesn't come over, and she gets sad if we're all getting together for a big family event and my partner is not there. She was a real encouraging force in my partner's quest for a driver's license, which I think is really ironic considering my grandmother's utter lack of driving ability, despite the fact that she had been granted a license. Anyway, that's a whole separate story. I think we could have a whole series of poems just on our grandparents' various driving abilities and the number of them that have driven through garage doors. Anyway, this poem is called Boyfriend. My grandmother is tiny and old and Italian, and she knows just enough English to ask me, so, you have a boyfriend? The Italian word for boyfriend is the same as the Italian word for fiance. And so the best way for my grandmother to strike out in the dark, to sidestep linguistic landmines, is to use English words that are as unfamiliar to her as the concept of being with someone, even when you have no intention of marrying them. Every time my grandmother and I have a conversation about u boyfriend, I know that each of us will be reminded of just how many things we don't understand. We are as close as two people can be when they are part of one family that is split between two completely different worlds, like two different recipes for pasta sauce, like the arrabbiata of two different generations. My grandmother doesn't understand why I can't just do things the way she did and the way her mother did and the way my mother did, as if we were all objects on an assembly line instead of items crafted by hand. When I tell my grandmother that I have something important to say to her, she asks me if I'm pregnant. When I tell her that I'm bisexual, when I tell her about men and women and about people and about how much love I have to give, she says that she would have preferred it if I'd been pregnant. Over the years, no small improvement stamped on a report card has ever gone unseen. No schoolyard grievance or petty workplace dispute has ever been left unheard. But the pillow forts and the vegetable garden, the home-cooked meals and the morning espressos and the countless episodes of Jeopardy now feel like they were building blocks in a house of Italian playing cards. When I tell my grandmother that I am dating someone small, gorgeous, vegan, feminine, and Jewish, she groans like she can see the faraway specter of her healthy, bilingual great-grandchildren rapidly disappearing into nothingness. She mourns them as if they were the only thing that ever mattered. She doesn't see the simple elegance of my own devastation when she serves me her scandalized and bewildered disappointment. Wouldn't it be better for each of you if you had a man instead of one another? Wouldn't it be better for this girl if she had a man instead of you? When we broach the topic of the boyfriend, I start to believe that maybe there are exceptions, that the rules of my childhood no longer apply, that maybe not every small joy or great disappointment is understandable or valid. It's only when we discuss the concept of the boyfriend that I understand that I will have to pick and choose which of my grandmother's words and thoughts and actions I will allow to affect me, because the alternative is to be fractured and splintered by her opinion on something she can't and doesn't and will never understand. The words in my mouth are like stones in my pockets when I say neither one of us wants a man right now. If we have chosen one another over every other man, woman, person, haven't we already proved that each of us is enough? Doesn't that prove that I am enough, just as I am? My grandmother has told me that she loves me always, forever, without exception, with or without a boyfriend. I choose to believe her. That deadly distinction between you are not enough and I love you anyway is a twisted and double-edged reassurance that I would not accept from anybody else. But my grandmother is tiny and old and Italian, and she loves me and she is mine. And this is all that matters. That love is what I pick and choose to remember when there is so much that still hurts and so much that I still don't understand. That love is all that matters. That love is a bridge that can be crossed even in translation. My partner is not Italian, but she's taking her second Italian course through Dawson College here in Montreal. And it's been really interesting to see how my ability to help her with her homework is decreasing dramatically as they do like passato prossimo and grammar that I've just like never learned because I have no formal education in Italian at all. Or when she'll ask me a specific question and I'll say, well, this is just how it is. And she's like, but can you explain the rules behind this? And I was like, I can't. It just sounds, you just know how it sounds, how it's supposed to sound. You know what I mean? And she's like, no, I don't know what you mean. And I was like, well, I guess it's a good thing you're taking this class because I can't, there are some things I will not be able to explain to you. So it's been really nice to see her, you know, her professor's name is Antonio Napolitano, you know, stuff like that. I didn't ever really think that my queerness and my Italianness would intersect in such a way. And so I count myself very lucky to have such a wonderful partner who really fully embraces this part of me and an Italian family who fully and totally embraces my partner, which is something that not everybody has. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm a big proponent of reading the book before you see the TV series or before you see the movie. The exception is L'amica geniale, My Brilliant Friend, because my partner and I started watching it together, and then I picked up the books, and the fourth volume has been sitting in my bookcase. I picked it up in Treviso, I think, the last time I was in Italy, and it's just been sitting there, and I can't read it until the last season comes out, and Rachel and I watch it together, and it just sits there and mocks me every day. This poem is called Ma ti fidanzeresti con me. We are watching L'amica geniale, My Brilliant Friend, because I am afraid that my Italian will soon become a ghost inside my mouth, shrink to simple salutations, bookending emails, be relegated to days of the week, dancing at the back of my throat. After every episode following season 1, episode 4, where we heard it first, I ask, Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? The subtitles read, Do you want to go steady with me? There is no but at the beginning of the translation, no filler word hiding behind a comma like a single tortellino. The words fidanzeresti, fidanzarsi are rooted in the gendered words for fiancé. The act of becoming engaged is posited as a question, as a conditional. Even the verb tense is lost in translation. The series takes place at a time when dating wasn't anything so much as the very brief interlude before marriage, when Fellini and De Sica were at work, when some of my grandparents still lived where they had been born. We watched the series on the big screen. I refuse to put Parmigiano on our popcorn. As time goes on, still other words evoke a time and place that I thought I had forgotten, a childhood spent on balconies and in backyards and at kitchen tables. Phrases like dammi la manina, vai a prendere un cerotto, andiamo a fare il bagno. As we watch an Italy constructed for the screen, for storytelling, for entertainment, a carousel of memories comes to life inside my head, of holding Nonna's hand as we cross the street, of fetching Band-Aids for Papa from the bathroom cabinet, of going to the beach and playing in the water. I am afraid that the only leftovers of my childhood will be a language that melts in my mouth before I can speak. After every episode, I ask her, Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? Because asking in this language and not another feels like reaching into a future where all the words I need are on hand and not on the tip of my tongue. I ask her, Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? And she never recognizes the words, only the tone, only the way I look at her when I say it. Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? She never really understands the first time, and I have to repeat it. And so every time I ask her is like the first time. And every time she says yes is like the first time. We live in a daydream of firsts, a real life mini-series of always asking to be together and always saying yes. Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? As if we don't hold hands when we cross the street, as if I don't keep her favorite brand of Band-Aid in my bathroom cabinet, as if we've never been to the beach and played in the water or lain together in the sun. On the day she learns the words posso avere un bacio and says them to me, I realize that this is just another way of saying I love you, which we have said more times and in more ways than I could ever hope to count on all the fingers of all the hands of all the people I knew back when I was 4, on the balcone and in the giardino and a tavola. Ti voglio bene grande così. Our love is vaster than the biggest measurement I could hope to express by stretching my arms back when I was 5. Ma ti fidanzeresti con me? I ask as if I don't know the answer because I never get tired of hearing it. I never get tired of hearing her say yes as if it were the first time. I never get tired of hearing words in our mouths that mean home. Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks for being here.
Very much, Liana. Our next speaker is Melissa Giacomini.
Hi, everyone. I'm really moved by being here today and by hearing everyone speak and share their stories through their writings. I'll be reading one poem today, and to share a little bit of context about it. So I'm the youngest of 5, and my parents immigrated from Calabria in the 60s, in the late 60s. And my father was in his mid 40s when I was born. So I was like, I came out of nowhere, really. My cousins are much older than me. My mom is younger than my father, but I remember hearing my older cousins be like, yeah, when your parents said they were expecting you, we're all like, what? Because no one was expecting me to come around. So I had a very different relationship with my father than my other siblings did, in that, you know, when I was 5 years old, he was like 50. And so I got like a softer, I got the softer version of my dad, who wasn't working 2 jobs all the time. He still worked a lot, but I just know that I got the lighter version of him. And unfortunately, he died when I was 21, and his illness and passing came as like a real shock to me. And this poem is inspired by him, his life, and also the life that he didn't get to live, which pushed me to come out and be myself. So this poem means a lot to me. And like many others within our community and our culture, I grew up Catholic as well, which had a big impact on my life and how I understood myself. So here's my poem, In the Name of My Father. A surprise. She arrived 3 days before 45. A script written for her before she became alive. Belle papa. Her eyes see the beauty in all she sees. The ripples of the lake water, the wildflowers kissed by bees. Her eyes feel the beauty of all she sees. She is only 5, and she sees bright blue eyes looking back at her. She is only 5, and she feels the pull of wonder to be close, to show the feeling she cannot name for the beauty she sees in front of her. With immediacy, she is confronted with a new script. Girls don't kiss girls. You don't do that. She is only 5. Confused, she asks herself, why don't girls kiss girls? A cupicirida. Are you gay? She is only 17, and she knows this is not in the script. The turmoil within her, like gusts of wind, pushing their way past an open door. A force of truth reminding her of who she knew she was when she was only 5. In seconds, the door slams shut, and she knows this is not in the script. No. Spero che tu sai che hai fatto tutto per voi. She is only 21. She numbs. He succumbs. This is not in the script. The loss of his presence, impossible to name. And so she lives, grieving in the name of her father. vivere senza rimpianti. The life she had known was no more. She feels the earth crumble beneath her, falling into a grave of her own. His death, of a safety she knew. His life, of challenge and triumph and regret. Devi sempre andare avanti. She grieves in the name of her father. Belle papa. She is only 32 when she leaves, when she finally breathes. This is not in the script. A deeply burning sigh inflaming her lungs like the winds of 17, forcing their way through her door. With time, this door stays open. Girls don't kiss girls. You don't do that. Her mouth breathes the flames of sacred rage, gently holding the child within her of 5 years, whispering, "You don't have to live by the script." Fearful, she proceeds, in her truths, in the name of her father. T'amo voluto tanto bene. She is 36. A rainstorm pushes through the open door, drowning everything in its path. Somehow, she floats. Facing the sky, she sees herself in the stars, and in the stars, her father. In the deafening silence, she is reminded, "Belle papa, t'amo voluto tanto bene." Instantly, she is overcome by the love of her father. Belle papa. In the storm's devastation, she is carried back to herself. Belle papa. She remembers her eyes that feel all the beauty she sees, and she remembers her eyes. Freedom overcomes her in the name of her father. Like the rush of the storm, she is swept away in her truths. She now lives. This is in the script. Dopo do malo tiempo venne do bon tiempo. She is at home in herself and in the truths of what she has known since she was only 5 years old. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next speaker is Steff Mendolia.
The first thing I just want to say is that this community means a lot to me. I didn't grow up with queer Italians to look up to. So I think, as you can see, I'm wearing a kind of wild shirt, and it's a punk or heavy music shirt. And I found community through music. And it was through meeting other punks that I felt looked like me, or I could share similar experiences with their families who were Arabic, Jewish, Portuguese, Latino. So I just want to throw that out there and say it really wasn't until I met and read the work of Anna Camilleri, and she connected me with this community that I think this whole experience has been really life-changing for me. So thank you all. I'm so happy to be here today and celebrate National Poetry Month with you all. I'm going to be reading 3 poems that are in the 2nd volume. And I'm not going to provide too much background information other than to say that there are references to like science fiction books and some of the music I listen to that is of this DIY punk metal grindcore. So unless you're familiar with some of that, you may not recognize it, but otherwise, of course, there's a lot of relatable themes in terms of queer Italian Canadian identity. So the first poem is called Mangiare gli occhi. In the dark, you are spilling paint cans everywhere. Without the faintest clue, St. Anthony has gone missing. The train's always on time. Listening, I try to pay no mind. Repetitious pang, a screeching reminder, I am stuck here. Facsimile, he says, unironic listening, I cannot hear from the pressure of my eardrum exculpation. Capsized bottles, dysfunctional hands gone limp, an anti-convulsant permutation. Often the lasting splendor of mournful mornings when I'm alone with an invisible nestled warmth in the diocese of determined hovels, gathering what is left, fish-gutted. I'd only hope you would have the courtesy to consume my eyes, to extol them, while they remain opened and I awestruck when I melt into a puddle of absolution. This next poem is called Talking to Trees. If she is a wall, we shall build for her a silver fortress, steadfast against temptation. This door is built of iron-covered stone. Because the wounded wounds rushed into these likenesses of images, it's all a blur of saturated colors in motion, a piercing stare, for I do not fear as I am transfixed by the blade I wield, remittances in his confessions, if not aggressively transposed into aphorism, without weakness from his penetrating gaze. I turn the other cheek. Alone in my heart, I am strong and clear-sighted, waiting for the forest's response, swaying in a place where magnanimity speaks. I cannot hear her answering over my repetitious, heartfelt gratitude while I hold onto her mossy sheath for dear life to hold me up against the pain of gravity. Until finally, in Hawthorne, she answers back to me. Leave and go, find where you can be, inflamed in peace. This next poem is called Anthology. In the place of hermeneutics, we need an erotics of art, since being feminine is a kind of a theater, and we know the Athenians did not rape their world. If complexity does not get us, then the paradox of syncope will. In a coagulative necrosis, like the way candy does not keep you nourished. Lacanian sexuation, imaginative thoughts bubble to the surface in a conflicting dialectic prisma. Because I find it is often the case, nostalgia has never tasted good to me. Therefore, I aspire to find a place where the ugliness is welcomed rather than brushed away or built on top of. Skin starved, writhing in the sand, you took a bite of silver cellulose. You left your mark, and for what? Vis mi modere tarso inderem. It is the feminist mode to let one's process of change stand as evidence. Okay, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much again. It really means a lot to me to be here. And shout out to my biological mom and aunt for being here today. That also means a lot to me. In the past, I've only really had chosen family here. So thank you to the bloodline for coming through. Take care, everybody. And thank you. I'm so honored to be on this panel with all the other poets and writers. You're all so amazing and inspiring and fill my heart with presence.
Thank you very much, Steff. And our next speaker, our last speaker for today is Christopher Sisca.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me, yeah? We're good? Yeah, okay, great. So I first off just again want to echo thank you so much for organizing this. It's so exciting to see a second volume come out. And also I'm just really humbled and excited and honored to be amongst um, other amazing writers and poets. So it's very special. Thank you. I'm going to read 3 poems today. And the only thing I'll say is that they're inspired by a period of time where I lived actually in Calabria, where my parents were born. I did field work for both my anthropology degrees, and it was extremely formative for me, both academically speaking, learning about the culture, but also personally. And also another inspiration came from moving back home during COVID, which I think most people can relate in their own personal ways to that change in time. All right, so the first poem is called Chipotle. Maroon velvet layers, pungency sweet, the sizzling heat of a place. That popular beach town with its cliffside arches, a Calabrian Colosseum, supporting the busy happenings above. How anything grows on rocks and stone, greenery and wild flora, prickly pear cacti with initials of love promises carved into their pin-cushion pads, a gesture of passione eterna, that it may evade death in all its forms. A monastery at the edge of Turanian West Coast vibes, stuccoed walls, terracotta tiles, the solemnity of an olive grove perched atop stone, and a single boat castaway tracing its journey alone. Palm trees and parked cars, packed panini and arancini, the swirl of a seaside outing, bless the beautiful day of golden blue, the inventor of the Speedo brief, and the men who wear them too. What has the Turanian seen? As people swim out, but never too far, playing and enjoying the day of sun, the union of body and nature. The weightlessness of the sailing space, floating on a hoverboard of blue like a single raft or fallen leaf, the world recedes, thoughts drawn out, and the weight of life fades to the rocking of a single pulse, hugged by ocean waves. All right. So the second poem is The Return. The stage set. Dark wooden frames, floors and supports of inheritance. A credenza for crystal bomboniere. The cabinet concealing a hidden record player, 45s of jazz, Italian music, and spoken word poetry. Linens and sheets of cream flecked with florals, table covers of lace and embroidery from Nonna's Malito and others from York Region dollar stores. The comforters of comfort, cover from the erosion of time and the cruel reality of being mortal. The surrealness of it all, familiar yet estranged, as if spectating the self, encased in a museum of memories. All the senses dance in a unified tarantella. Act 1, a romantic reunion, back to the glow of a distant nostalgia, excited that the journey was made, lamenting the time lost, but relieved of what still remained. Act 2, the habitat of habits, tripping into past potholes of repetition and closetedness, predetermined roles and regulations, inescapable from the contexts of a cultural upbringing, the conditions which conditioned mood swings of indecision, move back or fall back, will do, should you, could do, or who. Act 3, sobering reflections, a collection of clutter, unfinished artworks and writings, not of procrastination, but pillars of progress, now seen through new perspectives, not as products, but valued practice. Act 4, a soliloquy of escape. What am I running to, and in turn running from? A wider Calabrian upbringing where I could not see my queerness, reflected in all its prismatic brilliance amongst the history, tradition, culture of family and religion. Act 5, the finale. Acceptance forged, not given. Space can be created for air and light to breathe in. cultures, and traditions ebb and flow like the lungs of an aging loved one who has seen life and experienced time, the foresight of letting go. Bring the best of the past with you and get on with the damn show. And the last one is called 7 Letters. How do you say it in Italian? I should say it in the language of my parents and grandparents and theirs, a decade without making it a family affair, first coming out twice, now in very different contexts. Mi piace. No. Io sono. No. Sono. I look distorted again. Or is it just the cabinet mirror, this room? An oceanic expanse like a dull pair of tailoring scissors, unable to cut the migrant telephone wires, tangled above Danforth and Broadview, or Dufferin and Eglinton, casting their shadows on aged sidewalks, or like the matted yarn of mom's crochet basket, or Nonna's broad beans coiling amongst the flower beds. We meet at the street outside the apartment, usual spot, walking towards the piazza, up the same inclined side streets, dark enough not to see but smell wisteria, dodging pavement trappings, warped and burst open by city trees and the resilient green beneath the cracks, showing that cracks and fragments are good. Trite this realization, it is a cyclical process, dizzying, spirally cyclone coiling 7 letters of infinite repetition, that dilemma, vulnerable exposure and judgment with every new person who asks or assumes, nuanced or tone deaf, set in the stages of kitchens and dining rooms, bars and beach days, sidewalk curbs and road trip rides. We arrive with the group. Has Santa Teresa always been this small and narrow a street? Or has all of Cosenza also just come out? The drowning hum noise of one-act plays and soliloquies, panel debates and stand-up comedies. But then there is the noise of cultured silence, shrill and acrid, disconnected reactions to coming out. A transformation in real time from conscripted character to chosen caricature into true form or another caricature, a limiting role available. How would they react? I'll get a drink. Something strong, something cold. Brooklyn IPA from that jazz and blues bar, a grossly ironic choice from a Canadian assumed American in Calabria. Although I could form the letters, to form the words, to form my phrase, Toronto and Cosenza could be one and the same. Maybe telling ones with shared history who occupy my memories and had investments in them made me senseless, insecure, angsty, and unsure. Same faces, new faces, drunk faces, hot faces, high faces, tired faces, spill out onto the street, smoke arguments and laughter, curling and crashing towards the dark stars of an omnipresent sky. What if my parents never emigrated? What if I grew up in Cosenza? What if my family stayed in the small villages where they came from, Malito or Pietrafita? What would my life have been like then? Stains sometimes stay in different shades with their edges still visible. Scars still remain in their silvery beauty, mapping out the experiences of life. Habits resurface to remind you of your past and of your weakness, your humanity. Spectral spectator to life participator is to finally live a future. Another sip, I interrupt the group, breathe in as they attentively wait. And that's that.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Chris. Thank you so much, Tina Biello, Liana Cusmano, Melissa Giacomini, Steff Mendolia, and Christopher Sisca for sharing your poetry today. It's so much better to hear you speak your own words instead of my reading them on the page as I prepared the volume for publication. Special thanks to the Canada Council for the Arts and to the League of Canadian Poets. This event was organized by Accenti and the AICW. To purchase the volume or to find out more about our activities, visit accenti.ca and aicw.ca and queeritaliancanadian.com. Our next online event will be on May 8th. Look for that at queeritaliancanadian.com. You'll get the details there. Official in-person launches will take place on May 2nd in Montreal as part of the Blue Metropolis Literary Festival, on June 6th in Toronto, on June 20th in Vancouver. I hope you will join us at one or more of the events. Thanks very much to my co-hosts, Christine Sansalone and Maria Pia Spadafora. And thank you all, family, friends, colleagues. Thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you soon online or in person.